Are you ready for this? Stories of jealous lovers, fortunes built and lost, even murder. Just a few things that underpin the tales of how Vancouver's most iconic buildings came to be. And we're going to dig into some of those dirty foundations right now with Will Woods. Will runs an award-winning tour company, and it's called Forbidden Vancouver. Oh, such mystery and intrigue, Will. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
in.
having me, Gloria. Thank you.
Okay, Forbidden Tours. What's the whole premise here?
Well, we want to take people out and explore Vancouver's oldest and neighbourhoods that have its richest history and really immerse people back in those lost years. The city's changed so much over the years. And we want to bring people on walks through its remarkable, its most interesting, its most intriguing histories.
Well, most intriguing and at times salacious, right?
True,
What
true.
is it about these forbidden stories that attract us, do you think?
Well, I feel like there's a couple of angles to this. One is that it can be really interesting and often fun to shine a light on how social mores have changed so much over the last, 100, 150 years. And things that were maybe salacious and outrageous 100 years ago are now just would be totally commonplace and accepted today. So I think that's a really, for me, an interesting part of doing this kind of work. I think also there's a chance when you're walking around and looking at these old heritage buildings to really immerse yourself visually in a time that's long ago. The city looks so different. We had streetcars going up and down this street right here, 100 or so years ago. That's totally gone now, and we love holding up old heritage and vintage photographs and immersing people back in that time.
Right, and how did you get into this?
Well, I'm from London, England, originally, as you can probably...
I detected an accent.
Yeah. So I've been here for about 17 years now, and I was really inspired by a couple of experiences I took. One was the Underground Seattle tour, which I expect lots of your viewers have taken, where you get underground in Seattle in these tunnels and explore the city's history there. The other was the Edinburgh Ghost Tours, and they use professional actors. They really bring that history to life of, medieval Edinburgh. And I thought, well, Vancouver needs something like that. So that was the start of this company.
I see. And who comes on these tours?
We have tons of people from all over the world. We have a lot of locals that come, actually. I'd say about 40% of our guests are locals, which is quite unusual for tourism companies in the city. I think people really like exploring the history of their city, and a lot of people, of course, have long family connections here, and they really enjoy hearing about what life would have been like when their grandparents or great-grandparents were alive.
Okay, I would love to dig into some of these stories, and I know you've brought some photographs here. We have some larger photographs as well to show everybody. Let's start with this one. What is going on here?
This mysterious woman in the veil.
Yes.
So this is 1955, and it's at a public inquiry into police corruption. And there'd been some big allegations made about top cops being on the take from gambling bosses. And Helen Douglas was her name. She was not a cop. She was the mistress of the chief of police. And she turned up, it was standing room only in the courtroom, and she turned up to testify. And she said that Walter Mulligan, the chief of police, had paid for expensive jewellery, trips to the States, he'd paid her rent, he'd paid for a love nest in Langley where they escaped on the odd evening or weekend together. Right. And when the judge said, well, Miss Douglas, where did the money come from to pay for all these extravagances? She said, I had the impression it didn't come from his salary, which I thought was quite a sassy line to use in a courtroom.
Perfect.
I won't say what happened to Walter Mulligan. Guests will have to come on the tour and find out for themselves.
I see, but again, when we're talking about the buildings and their history, this was in the old courthouse?
That's right, which is, of course, the Vancouver Art Gallery today. Yeah.
I know, that's been completely transformed as well. What about this lovely woman? What's the story behind this?
Oh, yes, Marie Lloyd. So she was from London, England, where I'm from, and she was a huge star in the Vaudeville era, which, of course, is long gone today. It was a time of variety acts and jugglers, comedians, dancers. We had a huge vaudeville scene here in Vancouver with many, many theatres, and she came and played at the Old Orpheum in
Where was the Old
1913.
Orpheum?
So you know where the Nordstrom building is,
Yes.
Microsoft building?
Yes.
It was right there.
Okay.
And before that, it was the Vancouver Opera House, which is a bit of a fancy name for also a vaudeville house, and that burnt down, it was rebuilt. And she came in 1913 to great fanfare, and on her opening night, you had the mayor there, all the city councillors had brought their wives with them, all the newspaper editors, and people were intrigued and worried about how salacious her act was going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were there any repercussions for her?
Well, she did perform her most outrageous or risque number, which was a song entitled She Sits in the Cabbages and Peas. You can't make this stuff up.
Outrageous!
I know.
Outrageous.
So this caused uproar in the theatre. The next day, there was an editorial in the World newspaper. We don't have the World newspaper today. It was a major newspaper of the time. And the owner himself wrote an editorial saying her act was lewd, it was disgusting. The mayor should take the Orpheum's license away.
Oh, my, scandal.
So what do you think Marie Lloyd did when she woke up and read this in the newspaper?
She probably said, I'm a star.
She marched up Pender Street to the World building,
Yes.
walked up to the top floor, went into the owner's office and slugged him in the face as hard as she could.
Oh, my.
That's called the
Good
police,
for
have her
her.
carried out of the building.
She's got attitude.
She does, she does.
Gotta love the characters there. This one is particularly intriguing, though. What is going on in this photograph?
Yeah,
Will?
so this is a strange scene. It's this large man beating these very distressed-looking men who are holding their heads trying to escape him. This is outside the Sinclair Centre on West Hastings Street, which I presume many viewers will know well from lining up to get their passports.
Oh, yes,
That's
of
what
course.
you do there now, right? It was the post office then. And the 1930s, of course, this was the Great Depression. The Great Depression hit Vancouver really, really hard. Unemployment here reached 40% at its worst. And there was no real welfare the way there is today. If you were a married couple, you got what were called relief payments to help you afford food. But if you were single, unemployed, you were on your own. So for women, the government said, well, you should have a male family member who takes care of you, a father, brother, uncle. If you didn't get along with your family or they were also broke, too bad.
Okay.
If you were a man, the government said, well, let's ship these men to remote work camps out in the middle of nowhere to do manual labour for 20 cents a day, keep them away from urban centres where they might cause trouble. 170,000 men were warehoused in these camps all around Canada, with lots and lots of them here in BC. So it was a huge PR battle throughout the Great Depression, with many people saying we have to close these camps, this is really unfair on these men. Mm-hmm. The government not wanting to spend money on welfare or unemployment insurance or other programs that we take for granted today. And it really came to a head here in Vancouver in 1938, where the government had decided to close the camps because there was so much PR heat,
Wow.
but there were no programs to help the men. They did an occupation at the old post office, a peaceful protest that lasted 30 days until Father's Day, 1938. The police came in through tear gas into the building, so the men were forced to escape, and then they beat them with batons on the way out.
But
yeah.
isn't that interesting? You're talking about something that happened so many decades ago, and here we have issues of homelessness, inflation, upcoming recession, all these kinds of things, and in some ways, history repeats itself.
You're totally right, and I think, I talked earlier about how social mores change. Well, here's an example of how, some things change and some things stay the same. I think police tactics have changed, but we're still dealing with housing problems today.
Well, again, interesting to learn about some of the history of some of the buildings in our midst. Will, how do people get in touch with you to sign up for the tours?
Super easy, forbiddenvancouver.ca. This tour's running every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m, right downtown. $32 for an adult, $29 for a senior or student, and we'll be running all year.
All the best, and thanks again for a
Thank you
little
for
bit of
having
the
me.
history lesson.
You're welcome.